You're listening to the Katie Halper Show, and I'm here talking to Pulitzer Prize winning musical theater writer, composer, lyricist, and playwright, and book writer. I never know how to phrase these musical theater terms.
Yeah, it's another language for sure.
Right? You didn't write the book, you wrote book.
Well, yeah, you can say it either way.
Yeah.
I wrote book, or I wrote the book for.
Right.
Either way works.
Sounds Russian. Wrote book. He wrote book.
He wrote book for Strange Loop.
For Strange Loop.
And helped Donald Trump win election.
Great election. Through Strange Loop, achieve election status. Victory of Donald Trump. Yeah, this show is going to get canceled right now.
I know.
Terrible. We just got canceled. So Michael R. Jackson holds a BFA and MFA in playwriting and musical theater writing from the NYU Tisch School of the Arts. As a songwriter, he has seen his work performed everywhere from Joe's Pub to NAMT. He wrote lyrics and co-wrote Book for the musical adaptation of the 2007 horror film Teeth.
I have no choice as I fade away. Then I hear their voice from inside me say,
Wife, what's taking so long? Get in here. It's not gonna suck itself.
And again has just won a Pulitzer Prize for a distinguished play by an American author, preferably original in its source and dealing with American life. And can I be vulgar and say the financial prize? $15,000.
Sure thing.
So welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Katie. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming back.
Yes, of course. I love talking to you.
I'm not going to say anything, but I always like to think that there is that Katie Halper Show bump that just pushed you, nudged you right over the edge for the Pulitzer Committee. And were you surprised when you heard about it? I don't know the process, but you had known you were nominated? Is that how it works?
No, it's a little bit different. The only thing that I knew was that it had been submitted for consideration, which a lot of shows are, and like sometimes there are years when they don't award it to anyone or for certain categories, I think. And so I was aware that the announcements were going to be happening, but I just had assumed that I wouldn't get it because I just was like, there's no way. Because also in my mind, it's something like I just felt like a Pulitzer is something for like a later career, writer who's very established or something. Like I don't, I don't know what their criteria really is. It's so crazy that I now have to like go on the Pulitzer website and actually like learn about it. Like I knew what it was, but like I don't know like the deep history of it and
right.
like. So it's like this whole experience has been like very stunning and exciting and shocking, and I like now want to I feel like I need to become like an expert in the Pulitzer Prize. I need to like memorize it.
Yeah, we should do an episode where we go over the history of the Pulitzer with you.
Yes.
Yeah. Where were you when you heard about this?
I was in this very bedroom,
wow.
which has served as a backdrop for many a Zoom meeting. In this very blue bathrobe and in my imperialist white supremacy, capitalist patriarchy with strike-throughs for each of those words, Bell Hooks t-shirt. It's my signature.
Has Bell Hooks contacted you yet?
No, I'm not at her purview. She's in Kentucky at the Bell Hooks Institute, last I heard.
Well, you got to do a presentation of A Strange Loop there.
Yeah, or maybe like on the other side of this, there can be a production and somehow we can get her to come to New York to come and see it and then like eviscerate it.
I'm sure she would love it. Although, she could say she enjoyed it and still eviscerate it. Like, doesn't she call Beyonce
I'm not a terrorist? Yeah.
But she also dances to her?
I know, but that's like when I fell in love with her.
I see a part of Beyonce that is in fact anti-feminist, that is a terrorist.
Because she can talk about a cultural figure and still enjoy their cultural life. So I always loved watching Belle eviscerate things. I would love for her to come and like enjoy the show and then tell me all the things that disturbs her about it.
In fact, if she didn't tell you disturbing things, you'd feel like you would fail.
Oh my God, fail. That's right.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll make it happen. Yeah. So tell us about your musical, Strange Loop, which was great. And I saw it live at Playwrights Horizons over the summer. It was really good. And I sat next to the actor from Modern Family.
Oh yeah, Jesse Tyler Ferguson.
Yes, he really liked it. Everyone loved it. It was really amazing.
That was the same day that Anna Wintour was there. She was at that performance.
Oh, really? And I didn't even know.
And she's like hidden behind her giant sunglasses.
Right. I probably couldn't see her hidden behind the sunglasses, and she's a slight lady, so a slight woman. But more importantly, your parents were there.
Oh yes, that's right. They were at that performance.
Yeah.
And they loved it. Like they totally loved it. It was like a very beautiful moment.
Yeah, and I got video of it, which I sent you, right? You have that?
Yes. I think you did, but like it's lost somewhere on my phone. Like
right,
it's like probably in a Dropbox link somewhere that I like can't find.
Right, you sound like me. So tell us about what this musical is about, as the person who created it.
Yeah, so A Strange Loop is it's a musical that I call it self-referential as opposed to autobiographical. But it's a musical about a Black gay man who works as an usher at a Broadway show while working on a musical that's about a Black gay man who works as an usher at a Broadway show.
I am a Disney usher, I'm barely scraping by. My discontentment comes in many shapes and sizes. When I wake up each morning, I tell myself to try. I tell myself that I will make no compromises.
It continues in on itself, an infinite sort of egress.
You write musicals? Yeah. Awesome. Have you seen Hamilton? We want to know what's going on in New York. Excuse you.
It's your daily self-loathing. Look, I had some time to kill. I thought I'd stop by to remind you just how truly worthless you are.
'Cause after what me and your dad went through to send your black booty to NYU, it appears you'd be just running around and without any direction.
I call it self-referential because I drew from personal experience to write it, but it's not straight autobiography. Like
snagging a man is like finding affordable housing in this town. There's a long wait list and the landlords discriminate, okay? Each time I try to chart my course, wild horses throw me off by force.
I don't think you're being totally stupid. I do think you might be overcomplicating.
The same old story, lurching after glory.
I'm not gonna stop asking until I get an answer, son.
And I fall short. I want you to like my writing, my music, this show.
I didn't go, when I was 6, this happened. And then when I was 12, it's like a little bit, it's like much more nuanced than that. And it's just about sort of a Black gay man sort of coming to terms with who he is and sort of examining the prism of self in general, but Black queer selfhood in particular.
Blackness, queerness, fighting back to fill this cis and all white space with a portrait of a portrait of a portrait of a Black queer face and a choir full of Black queer voices, treble clef,
and also bass
that are casting spells to conjure up a
big Black and queer as American Broadway. 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 Show!
Now, how you like them apples?
What are you working on now? I mean, that musical is very political and personal, and, I know that politics is something that is very personal to you and you care about a lot. So what are you thinking, feeling, doing right now in those realms, creatively, and also what's on your mind today politically?
I mean, a whole lot, I have to say. I mean, in terms of just what I'm working on is my next show that I've been developing with the Vineyard Theater in New York City is a musical called White Girl in Danger.
White girl in danger. She's doing drugs, but she won't do her homework.
Nice.
Which is a kind of, it's in some ways it's a little bit of an analog to A Strange Loop.
Her white girl protects it from her honors. She always takes up the slack. She lets him feel like a human supernova, like he could conquer the earth, like he's the heir to the power and oppression her kind of wielded since birth. Because white girls can do anything, can't they? Black boys must always obey their mothers. White girls can do anything, can't they? Can't they? Can't they? Can't they?
It's a musical, a sort of satirical, dark comedy musical set in the world of Lifetime original movies from like the 90s, like in the sort of universe of that, sort of broadly, and soap operas more generally. And because I grew up on soap operas, and so I wrote this musical set in that universe in a town called All White.
Okay, Girl White, let's do this. A 1, a 2, a 3, 4.
And in the town of All White, there are people known as, they're the All White, who are white people who have these like amazing melodramatic stories that sort of are like their whole world.
When I get, they say, I do, they say, let's be, they say, you and they.
And then there are characters known as the Black Rounds, who are just black characters who are like basically extras that support the all-white stories. And then one of the Black Round is a girl named Keisha, who decides that she has what it takes to be the protagonist in an all-white story. She ends up having to sort of usurp the identities of her 3 main rivals, Negan, Megan, and Megan.
Right.
So three variations on a Megan.
Are they spelled the same way or different ways?
No, they're all spelled totally differently in Tweely. Like they're each Twee. Like one is M-A-E-G-A-N, one is M-E-A-G-A-N, and then one is M-E-G-A-N.
That girl, Megan White, has a family that's so wealthy. Still that gal ain't looking healthy with them pills in her bag. That girl, Megan Whitehead, she was always so outspoken. Now she's always bruised and broken. Is that not a red flag? Megan Whitehall never finishes her dinner. She's so thin and getting thinner that she's fading from sight. Cause she's a white girl in danger. She's doing drugs, but she won't do her homework. She's acting big, but she won't answer questions. Danger, 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 danger.
Anyway, so and then sort of chaos ensues as this black girl becomes the center of an all-white narrative. And so I'm working on that. And then in terms of like what I'm thinking about politically, well, obviously I'm thinking about COVID-19 and about the first responders and about the people who are sick, people who are dying, the people who have died. I'm thinking about how this virus has really exposed all of the existing inequities that exist across the globe. It's almost like you walk into the kitchen late at night and you turn on the lights where you see all the roaches in the kitchen. But in this case, the roaches don't run away.
Right.
They just stare and look at you. Like they've been there the whole time. All the sort of inequality, the racism, and the classism, and the ableism, and the, you name it.
Right.
And all been exposed. And I'm just thinking about how this, and how that sort of comes hot on the heels of, you know, Bernie Sanders essentially losing the Democratic primary and like championing Medicare for all, and then suddenly we're in a moment when like all these people are out of work, they've lost or are losing their health care, and now like all these things that sort of a lot of progressives and leftists and socialists have been sort of screaming about, suddenly those issues are like materially what's in the air and like what, you know, we need to really be figuring out how to address and how do we move forward, you know, if we're not taking care of our citizens in this country and across the globe. So that's, you know, and meanwhile there's like an election coming up, and like Cuomo's tried, and the Board of Elections tried to take Bernie Sanders off the ballot, and like why, like it's just all like all of it, like in Biden and Tara Reid and Trump is crazy, and like just I'm thinking about all of it. But again, it's the roaches. All the roaches are just staring back. They're not retreating to hide what the lights are on. That's how I feel about this moment politically.
And is that, I mean, that seems like that describes both kind of the effect of Trumpism and then COVID on another level. It's like they're like two turning on lights or two unmaskings.
I mean, I think it's actually more than that. I mean, I just think that all of these issues have been on the table for decades. Like, I was talking to another friend who said that she feels like it's almost like the universe is putting us to a test and it's saying, this is just the preamble. If you fail this test, then like the next test, then I'm really gonna like mess you up.
Right.
You know, like we have a choice right now to like learn a lesson and like to change course in a major way. Because like also like just looking at all of these frontline workers and quote unquote essential workers, like these are the worker bees and the workhorses that like the wealthy are riding on and depending on. If they're all getting sick and dying or whatever, they can't actually do work for you.
Right.
So even if you like don't think that people should have like equal pay or whatever, or like commensurate with like what they need to live, if they literally start dying, you can't get back to work.
Right.
You don't even know how to pick your own food or kill your own chickens.
Right.
Or all the gross things that we don't like to think about that power our lives.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's like a very powerful lesson can be learned right now, and I'm hopeful that like the direness of the situation will trickle up to people who are like moving the gears and levers of our world to be like, oh, we actually have to take care of our people. Like we actually have to do it.
It's really interesting because I was actually just talking about this with my co-host Matt Taibbi on my other podcast, Useful Idiots, the Rolling Stone one I do. And we had a virologist on, and we were talking about how there's viruses, there's disease, climate disasters, and those things are both like universal, but also very much fit into whatever inequities and inequalities already exist. So with COVID-19, for instance, the Black community is much more hit by this than the white community, than white people. I don't even know. That sounds weird. I don't know what the white community is. Anyway. But there's environmental racism, and if you were poor, if you were Black, if you were brown.
Detroit. I'm from Detroit, and like
Detroit, yes.
Hit Detroit quite hard.
Yep, Flint, Michigan, right, with the water, all those things. So you can't separate them, but at the same time, they are things that are somewhat universal. Like in the example you just gave, Michael, like you may not care about essential workers, living wage. You may not care about their like well-being, but it's actually, even if you're just a terrible, ruthless, self-interested person, it's in your own self-interest to support these people because they're the ones saving you or feeding you or whatever. So I do think, I agree, there's something kind of biblical in this great reckoning moment where, you know, like Job from the Bible, right? Like he's tested. That's a little different because the message there is to have faith, and we need the opposite. We need people to like wake up.
Yeah. I mean, and it's like, it's funny, like I like was fighting with my landlord because I'm not paying my rent right now.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Because there was like issues in my building that were pre-existing before this pandemic.
Pre-existing condition.
Now, like, exactly. And I was just like, I know it's not your fault, but it is now your problem. And I think that's for me is like a global thing. Like, although globally it is actually their fault, but like, but like the issue, but my point is just that like our fates are quite interconnected.
Yeah.
That's why like that movie Parasite was so great.
Oh yes, great
like,
movie.
Their fates are just interconnected. They haven't figured out AI yet.
Right.
They haven't figured out the robots yet. So until they figure out the robots that can just do everything that like low-paid, undocumented workers can do, or like Black nurses or whomever, like until they can figure that out and how to automate all of it, our fates are completely interconnected. Yeah.
And it's also interesting because one of the things that you talk about in, or A Strange Loop deals with, is HIV and AIDS. Mm-hmm. And so the role of, you know, health issues, stigma. Obviously, with the COVID, there isn't the same stigma, right? Because what was HIV called before? GRID, gay-related.
Like gay-related
immunodeficiency. Yeah,
I think so. GRID,
and
gay, and people call it like gay cancer.
Yeah, Has this made you think about that more or in a different way? Has it, I mean, because I can't remember, like, this is unprecedented for I think all living people, right? I don't think anyone who's alive now has lived through something like this.
Well, I think there are some like very old people who lived through the Spanish flu as like children, but even that is like different in some ways from this. I've actually been listening to some HIV scholars who, some of them caution against drawing too much of a parallel, and some people don't. I guess like for me, the difference is that this virus is like much more communicable than HIV, and for that reason, there's actually less institutional stigmatization of it. It seems.
Yeah.
Though it is disproportionately affecting some communities than others, but at the same time, I can see how, like psychologically, you could make the comparison, because it's like I talked to people who have gotten COVID, and they felt like they had done something wrong, or like they had somehow failed. And I think that psychologically can do that to you. And we're all like walking around 6 feet away from each other and with our masks and worried about droplets and,
right.
and is it on my banana
right.
that I picked up at Whole Foods or whatever, wherever you shop. And like all those things I think create this weird, paranoia that might, feel somewhat like what people felt during HIV before they really knew how it was spread, how to protect against it. I'm not as one way or the other about it as some people are.
I mean, there's so many differences, and in terms of stigma, like this is, like we said, this hits certain populations harder, but it's not a disease that started in one community.
Right. So there are those who are trying to scapegoat like
Asians. Right. Exactly. Right.
And it was funny, like even somebody pointed out on like Instagram, like I kind of as a joke that like they were kind of skeptical even of like, you heard about the murder hornets?
Yeah.
Like they're Asian.
Right.
Quote, Asian murder hornets. And like even like naming it, calling it that feels like a weird, almost like a subliminal message in some.
Right.
That there's like these, Asian.
We got to get some like European hornets. Wasp. Oh my God, wasps. We need a wasp. Waspy wasps.
Right.
We need to show some terrible wasps doing something. Wasp on wasp violence is a real problem, Michael.
It is. And, and I think that they're just fatherless.
Yes.
Fatherless wasps.
Yep. Broken wasp nests.
Broken wasp nests.
Yeah. It's real. It's a real thing. They have to pull themselves up by their wings, by their wing straps. Yeah. I realize we're talking about what this musical is about and how it is based on your stories, but it's not totally autobiographical, but it's self-referential. And of course, the role of memory is important. How do you like that segue?
Right.
We're going to hear this song called Memory Song that Michael, you wrote and are singing in this. And then we'll come back and we're going to bring on Ava Farkas, the executive director of Met Council on Housing. So you guys should conspire about what you can do about your landlord if you want. We can do a mock role play.
Sure.
Okay, so let's hear that song, Memory Song, and then we will talk to you, Ava Farkas, in a few minutes.
Dad is drunk and on the couch and mom eats a pork chop. Daily bread mill, daily treadmill, won't ever stop. One lone black gay boy I knew who chose to turn his back on the Lord. One lone black gay boy I knew who chose to turn his back on the Lord. I am lying on the couch, I dream that I'm flying, flapping both my wings so hard to keep me from dying, with the crown of God's forsaken thorns on my head. Like all those black gay boys I knew who chose to go on back to the Lord. All those black gay boys I knew who chose to go on back to the Lord. All those black gay boys I knew who chose to go on back to the Lord. And one black gay boy I knew who chose to turn his back on the Lord.
And that was Memory Song by Michael Jackson of A Strange Loop. Michael Jackson, again, has been on the show before, and he graced us with his presence once again, even though he's now a Pulitzer Prize winner. He remembers his roots, his year-old roots when he came on the Katie Halper Show. And Michael's about to, do his thing. He's probably going to get off this show, and I don't know, there's going to be a limo waiting for him with a martini in it to take him around the block. I was going to say to see a show, but then I remember we're living in a COVID world. And we're joined by Ava Farkas, the executive director of Met Council on Housing. Ava and Michael, I want to introduce you guys to each other because Michael just brought up a housing thing.
Oh, yeah.
And Ava, you can give him some more tips. But he told his landlord this. What you want to tell her what you said?
Yeah. So can I just explain the situation, or is there not time to? All right. So basically, what happened is a year ago, while my show was running at Playwrights Horizons, Con Edison told my building to turn the gas off because I guess there was issues with the pipes or something, and they had to replace all the pipes in the whole building. So then they turned the gas off. And then the building had to hire a plumber and do all the stuff. So, and that whole process of them coming in our apartments and ripping the walls up and all these things, and then finally they got toward the end of the process where they got the pipes replaced, but then they had to get all these inspections. And then right when they were about to get all the inspections, that's when the pandemic hit. In the meanwhile, all we were working with was a hot plate, and I stamped my feet, and they gave me a convection oven. So then, I let it go during the year because I was so busy with the show and other things that I was eating out all the time anyway. But then once the pandemic hit, I'm now me and my roommates have to deal with this hot plate all the time. And finally, I was just kind of what's going to happen? Are they going to do the inspections? Are they going to turn the gas back on? Because it's just so hard to make full meals on this. And so I didn't pay rent last month, and then I hadn't paid it for this month. And I wrote my landlord a letter saying, listen, I am prepared to pay the rent, but I need to know what's happening with this. This can't go on forever and ever. This is not a safe situation. Yeah. And he tried to guilt me and be we've gone above and beyond and blah, blah, blah. And a friend of mine died of COVID, just through all this, everything. And and this is the building manager, not the landlord directly. And so I just said, so then they were well, they said that they're going to have inspectors come tomorrow, which is today, which they did. And they said they're going to come back. Con Edison said they're going to come back on the 14th to turn on the gas, allegedly. And I just said, well, let's revisit this conversation once that's happened. Because if they don't show up and this keeps going on, I'm holding on to my rent.
Can I interrupt you?
No, I asked you.
No, it's okay.
It's the hotline.
I love tenants' rights questions. One question for you. So do you know if you're in a rent stabilized apartment?
Yes, I am.
Okay, that's great. So not having gas is a violation of the warranty of habitability. So that's a service you're paying for that you're not getting. It sounds like you haven't had it for about a year.
I have hot water, but I don't have a working stove.
Right. So not having a working stove that's a service you're paying for, and you shouldn't have to pay your full rent for all that time. You're entitled basically to an abatement for that time.
Which is what I asked for.
There you go.
You haven't had full services. So there's a number of things you can do. You can withhold rent. Your landlord could take you to housing court, and then you can appeal to a judge and have a judge sort out how much of an abatement you can get. You can also fill out a administrative form with the state agency, which deals with all rent regulated apartments. So you can file for a reduction in rent for decreased services with Homes and Community Renewal. And it's always really good. Whenever anybody has a problem like this, gas is an issue that can take a year or more to get turned back on, because there was the explosions in buildings. And so there's many layers of bureaucracy to getting the gas turned back on. So it's really important to report it as quickly as possible and to file for a rent reduction at the beginning, because the state will only give you the abatement back to when you filed. It's really messed up. So it sounds like what you're doing now, though, is like a good approach, because you can, and you can also negotiate that. But the best thing is for you to talk to your neighbors. So this is where organizing comes in, because
and I thought about
you guys can negotiate a better deal if all together you're withholding rent, or you're all demanding and putting pressure on your landlord together, because you're all affected by not having gas.
Safety
so I would
numbers,
say talk to your
power
neighbors
numbers,
and try to make a demand together collectively on your landlord and take some type of collective action.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
There you go, right there. A little socialism in action.
You're welcome. And you guys are not, and also there is currently a statewide rent strike going on.
Yeah,
so,
no, I know that.
And so people are both being hit by the economic issues of COVID-19, and many people already have existing issues in their building. And so people are, already can't pay, already having problems paying the rent. And then if you're in a situation like yours where you've already been paying rent for services you're not getting, you have the right to withhold rent and to demand those services along with your neighbors. And there's a whole movement happening across the state and now across this country that you guys can also plug into.
Right.
Look at that. And Michael, what did you say? It says it's not your fault.
It's not your fault. It's your problem. I told that to the building manager. I said, I know this is not your fault, but now it's your problem.
Boom.
Yeah, and you're paying for a service you're not getting.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't have to do that.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Wow. I feel like we all learned a lot just now.
Yes, thank you for that. I appreciate it, and thank you for the work.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Michael, are you going to go take your limo ride now?
Yeah, I'm going to go take my limo ride to find something to eat, because I had been checking my messages about the Pulitzer all day, and I hadn't eaten anything.
Is there a ceremony that's going to happen?
Probably
on Zoom.
Whenever, not on Zoom. I think they're actually going to try to postpone it until we're able to gather together again.
Where can people find you online?
On Twitter at the Living MJ, as in the Living Michael Jackson, at the Living MJ.
Smart.
My website is thelivingmichaeljackson.com. And my Instagram is The Living Michael Jackson. So that's my brand.
Great. That is your brand. Where's the Strange Loop coming next? Where was it
now,
going to?
It's scheduled to go out of town to the Woolly Mammoth Theater Company in Washington, D.C. in the fall. Obviously, that's pending world events. But right now, it's scheduled to be there in October, I believe. September, October. And who knows beyond that? But that's right now where Strange Loop is. So I'd love if people consider buying Strange Loop wherever you buy music or find music. Buying it is better than streaming it, but streaming it is okay.
Right.
If that's what you got. But a Strange Loop original cast album available on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, wherever you find music, cast album.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael Jackson, Pulitzer Prize winner. Make sure you see Strange Loop, his great musical.
Thank you so much, Katie. It was a pleasure to be on with you.
Thank you. You too. See you soon, I hope.
Take care.
Bye.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Thanks for your advice.
And again, Ava Farkas, thank you for coming. I know you're a big fan of Michael Jackson, both the living and the dead Michael Jackson. Tell us what's happening in the world of housing and organizing. Cuomo has been getting a lot of love for some reason. People, I think, really like how decisive he is. I think the bar is so low.
He can read PowerPoints very effectively.
Yeah, he can read PowerPoints, and he doesn't suggest injecting bleach. So I think people think he's quite a brilliant man. Reimagining schools, maybe with the Gates Foundation, which is, of course, scary to me. But you, as someone who is the head of this great housing and tenant rights organization, tell us what's happening on that front.
I think we have a very different experience of Governor Cuomo. Recently, the budget that was passed in the beginning of April, as an example of his failure of leadership. So in the midst of the epidemic that was already happening in early April, he passed an austerity budget, cut money for Medicaid, provided no additional money to deal with the homelessness crisis, to help repair the crumbling public housing across the state. And he's always had this 2% artificial spending cap. He has gotten the legislature to agree that they will never increase the size of the budget more than 2% every year. And this is just fiscal conservatism. You know, it's not like it's not a law, but the legislature acts as if this is a law that is imposed on their budget process. And it's because he doesn't want to tax the wealthy of New York State. So instead of taxing the rich, he is making everyday New Yorkers and the poor like pay for the money that we don't have, and is cutting programs. And then what's more, he gave himself special powers to continue to cut essential services throughout the rest of the fiscal year if there's a shortfall in tax revenue. So there's definitely going to be a shortfall because of this crisis. So there's just going to be more austerity and more cuts happening. So in the housing world, we are grappling with like the homelessness crisis. There's 93,000 homeless New Yorkers across the state. And without like permanent housing for them, like this health crisis is just going to get exponentially worse. Like already we see shelters are a place where like people are being infected. He has no solution to that. There's no additional money in the budget to deal with homelessness. The state of public housing, where there's mold, where people have to crowd into like one elevator because the other elevators are not working, are like further exacerbating this health crisis. So Cuomo is really getting a lot of credit that he doesn't deserve when he is a fiscal conservative, when he's pushing austerity, and when he's not really coming up with real solutions to the crises that we face in housing and many other areas of life.
Of course, it's a myth that you can be a fiscal conservative and social liberal, because for better or for worse, the way that works is it hits people of color more than white people. That's just the way it works, numerically speaking. And so even though I think it's inhumane no matter what, I think fiscal conservatism is inhumane no matter what. But it's not even like, you're not even being true to your principles of post-racial meritocracy. Like, it doesn't even exist when you're fiscally conservative. But Ava, what are things that Cuomo could do? What are things that you guys are asking him to do that he's not doing? What can people do now, especially because organizing is so different in this post-COVID world?
So we're asking Cuomo for 3 things. We're asking him to cancel rents and mortgages for 4 months or the duration of this crisis, whichever is longer. We're asking him to freeze rents. So we don't want anyone to see a rent increase when people have to go back to paying rent. And we want to reclaim homes. We want homeless New Yorkers to be immediately housed in hotel rooms. We want money to go to reinvesting in public housing. And we also need like an ambitious new plan for social housing, new housing construction to house all the New Yorkers that need permanent housing that's affordable. So we have like both policy and budgetary demands for the governor, but canceling rent is really, I think one of the most immediate demands. And we've been organizing in a lot of creative ways. So I was part of a car protest on May 1st, which was May Day, but also when rent is due for millions of New Yorkers across the state. And we did a car protest outside of his daily press briefing, delivered demands. We got some good coverage. There was also like a car caravan protest in the city. So there's a lot, like people are hanging banners, people are putting signs in their windows that say cancel rent, people are doing a lot of creative things. And I think now also is like a fertile time for organizing, especially around housing, I think, because people who don't have essential jobs or have been laid off are at home now. So I think people are thinking more about their living conditions and also are thinking about, have the time to deal with things that they never had time to when they were working. So like there was a group of tenants in Harlem who are all going on rent strike because they can't pay. And one of the women said, I used to have a very like time consuming job and I can never really be involved in organizing or activism because my job was so demanding. But now I have all this time, I got laid off. So I think a lot of people are now able to spend the time talking to their neighbors and like engaging in activism. So I think there's also like, now's a very ripe time also for organizing. And I think especially on issues of housing and rent.
It's funny, you'd think that Andrew Cuomo would be more sensitive since his brother has been stricken with COVID-19. Although he apparently...
Yeah, he's recovered,
I think he's recovered, yeah. He got very mad at a guy who suggested that he not gather like with his family in front of his house. I don't know if you saw that, but
I don't want some jackass loser fat tire biker to be able to pull over and get in my face and in my space and talk to me. I don't want to hear it.
He's always very angry, Chris Cuomo. He's a great foil for Andrew. He makes Andrew look very calm. And what can people do who want to get involved in your organization?
So we have a hotline that takes questions about tenants' rights. So like the question that Michael was asking me, that's like perfect question. If you have an issue like that, you can call our hotline and you can talk to one of our volunteers who can walk you through like what your rights are and what your options are for how to advocate for yourself and your neighbors. The number to that is 212-979-0611. And we're open Mondays, Wednesdays, and Friday afternoons. And we also have tools and resources if you want to organize with your neighbors and you are going on rent strike. We have a toolkit that we can send you. You could also access it on our website, which is metcouncilonhousing.org. We have a petition. We're still collecting signatures to Cuomo, calling on him to cancel rents. So you can also sign our petition. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot you can do. You could put a sign in your window. We really want people to put signs in their windows that say cancel rent.
What are the issues on a national level that you want candidates to adopt?
Ilhan Omar just introduced a bill on this issue that would be really important that people on the federal level support. Sanders was like pushing some type of like national rent control policy. So we hope that Joe Biden stops. Yeah.
And Bernie's back on the ballot in New York State.
The primary back on?
You didn't know that? Oh, yeah. Back on.
No.
Thanks to a decision made by Annalisa Torres, a judge who used to live in my grandmother's building on 92nd Street. I'm just saying.
Oh,
little
wow.
time travel Katie
Great.
Halper Show bump. I'm pretty sure from those elevator rides on the Upper West Side, they add up. Okay, well, we are out of time. Time flies when you're having fun, but thank you so much for this update. And Ava, where can people find more information about you and Met Council on Housing?
metcouncilonhousing.org, and we're also on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook.
Great. And we will see you next week. Thanks so much for listening to the Katie Halper Show. Thank you so much.